Hi, this is Gordon Hisayasu, and this is the second part of the introduction to my video. The reason that is a second part is because I went back and looked at my videos, and I realized I sit in my room alone and I make these things and I have these notes and get a little nervous, but I kind of missed the main point I want to emphasize in this, so I had to go back and sort of evaluate what all these videos are about, and I'd like to kind of explain that in this introduction. Okay, one of the things that I remember is there's a movie called The Flower Drum Song, and in one of the songs it says 100,000 miracles happening every day. And this is kind of the way that I feel, because I think that science exposes all these miracles that we don't appreciate or we don't even bother to look at. And we kind of take it for granted all the time. And that's kind of what science has done. It has kind of introduced me to the concept of discovering God's miracles through science. Here's one of those miracles. I just want to kind of go back and kind of give a synopsis of what this video is all about. And this is an example. This is the breath of air that we take every day, not to be confused with God's breath of life that the Bible talks about. But the breath of the air that we take is oxygen. And we can go start with the cosmology, where they try to explain that oxygen, which is number 8 on the periodic table, is formed inside stars, like the other 100 plus elements also, by the nuclear fusion that occurs within stars. And these stars explode, the supernova that you've probably heard about. And the supernova distribute all of these elements as stardust. And this is where our Earth and our Sun form from. And so we have these elements within our Sun and within the Earth because the nuclear fusion within a star. So now we have to get a little bit into what the ecologists or other people are talking about, because that oxygen that is in our elements formed within the planet have to get into the atmosphere. And that's a pretty complex process that I think has many, many steps to it. I heard that there was a big explosion of oxygen into the atmosphere about 2.5 billion years ago. But it wasn't until about 800 million years ago that animal life was really able to utilize oxygen in the air. And they kind of try to explain how this happened, and it's a very complicated process. But once the oxygen, which had to be in its covalently bonded molecular form of O2, which makes it gaseous, was in the air, then we got to turn to the physiology of this. And the physiology is that we have these lungs that are able to breathe in this air and this oxygen. And the oxygen gets basically captured by the hemoglobin in our red blood cells. And then our heart pumps these red blood cells to every living cell that we have in our body, the 37.2 trillion living cells that make up a human body. And then we have to turn to the chemist, and the chemists are going to explain how this oxygen is used to do the metabolic functions within the body that are necessary for life. And that's a very simple version of a miracle. And it's because understanding oxygen and the science of oxygen really helps me to understand how I cannot take this breath for granted. And that is something that God gave me. So go back to my videos. Chapter 1 was the brain. And basically, it's just telling me that as a human, I have the ability to believe. And that brain gives me that capacity to believe. The second chapter I talked about was home. And this is basically talking about Earth and a environment provided for us so that we can live, and it's not a lucky environment. You will find out how special it is and how God our Father provided this environment for us to live in. The third chapter I talked about was the photon, and this is light. I think I've heard that we see about 3,000 stars with our naked eye, and many of those stars that we see are not just a star, they're a galaxy. In fact, now I've heard there is maybe as many as 2 trillion galaxies in the universe, in our known universe. And it's kind of amazing, because we can see these kind of things. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, has about 200 billion stars in it. So with 2 trillion galaxies, we're looking about trillions and trillions of stars. And we have 9 planets circling our sun. So how many planets are circling all these trillions and trillions of stars? So basically the very complexity of what we are able to see because of the photon is what really helps us. It helps science discover. But for a Christian, it helps them to see. And for a Christian, seeing is believing. But it's seen not only with your mind and ability to reason, it's seen with your heart. The next chapter I did was called The Relevance of Questions. And it kind of falls along the line that, there are 7+ billion humans on the earth. And supposedly Homo sapiens have been around for over 200,000 years. That's not very long, 200,000 years. And we have this accumulated knowledge that we have all this time. And even with the internet that helps us communicate with each other, we still come across the main idea of we really don't know. The main questions that come up in life, we really don't know the answers to. And part of this I don't know aspect is that maybe that's something that we need to learn. The big question maybe is, how smart are we really? And are we really smart enough to know that we're not that smart? The next chapter, the chapter 5, the last chapter I did after I read this, is on life. And for me, life is very brief. It's that little spark that sort of flutters in and out of existence, and I can talk about that in terms of time frames and everything, but I really wanted to emphasize the specialness of God's gift of life. But what it really means to me personally is that life is basically the opportunity I had to have faith and to have hope, and it is basically my journey to God. And so these videos that I'm making are really part of trying to explain how science has affected my ability to have faith. And I'll probably try to make a video maybe about that. I'm not exactly sure what chapter 6 is going to be, but I will basically try to keep more to the point. One of the things that you probably will realize after you've maybe seen some of these videos is that it's not a book. I didn't put this together as a book. I'm just kind of winging it. I have many, many writings on all these, and I have many, many collected data because I've always studied science all my life. And I basically have found that this sort of evolves. I'm not positive. I feel very compelled that God and science really are quite a way to understand what life is all about, the meaning and purpose. And so that's probably why I'm making this video. So I'll probably talk to you in chapter 6 once I figure out what it is. Thank you.